In today's video, I am answering another viewer's question, and this one is around my choice not to have children. So, if this is something that you're currently grappling with, or you know somebody who is, then send them this video because it might just help them make the right decision for them. So, on that note, let's get to it. When I was growing up, I knew that I didn't want to have kids. In my heart, I knew, but if I ever said, I don't think I want to have kids, people would just dismiss that and say,
Oh, wait till you grow older. You want to have kids. Wait till you meet somebody you love. You want to have kids. Wait till your biological clock starts ticking.
so naturally, as a young, immature person, I deferred my better judgment to the people around me who I figured knew better than I did. And I just waited and I found a great guy and we got married. And I assumed that at some point I would want to have kids with him, but I didn't. So what ended up happening was about a year into our marriage, I was pretty confident that I didn't want to have kids. And we tried counseling and trying to figure things out, but this is one of those very binary things in a marriage where you're either going to have kids or not have kids. There's not much of a compromise there. So we decided to part ways amicably. And then I was now in the dating world trying to navigate this new commitment that I had made to myself not to have children. And I decided to obviously not wear a t shirt saying, I don't want to have children because it wasn't who I was. It was just a personal choice that I decided to make in my life that I then had to evolve into the conversations I was having with people on like the first couple of dates when you're talking about your preferences and what you want out of life and those sort of things. That's when I would bring up the point where I was very confident I didn't want children. And sometimes that became more of a conversation depending on the person I was with and whether or not they wanted to have kids, which might mean that was the last date we would go on. But as long as you're very open about those things, it's not personal, right? It's just a decision. So, in terms of getting very confident about the decision I was making, what I did was talk to other people. At the time, I was a trade show manager. And I remember this one specific trade show I was going to where the whole global sales organization was coming in. And I knew a lot of them, not like really well, but enough that we could have conversations about life over dinner and stuff like that. And I asked everybody, what are your thoughts on having children? Do you have kids? If so, are you glad you had kids? Could you see life without kids being enjoyable? I asked all of those questions, and people were very open about sharing their realities. Some people said, I wish I hadn't had kids, or I could see myself being very happy without kids. And they were open because, again, this was the global sales organization of people I knew tangentially. They weren't in my social circles where we would make personalized judgments about things that people were saying. So put it out there and don't necessarily ask the people that are in your world. Ask the people that are slightly outside of your world that have absolutely no agenda around you having children or not. So that was one thing that was really helpful for me. Another thing that I think would have been helpful that I just wasn't aware of at the time was really understanding what my values are. I do think that values are something that evolve to some degree over time, but really your core values are based on a lot of life experience that happens early on in life. So I always knew, even though I'd never really articulated it, that freedom and independence were my primary values. I always wanted to be in situations where I had a lot of alternatives, a lot of choices, and not a lot of things holding me down because I found that I was somebody who needed to experience life in a way that wasn't typical. I had already started to realize that I'm somebody who needs a lot of novelty. I really enjoy adventure and I really enjoy having my time to myself. That was a big value for me. And also, this feeling of knowing in this life that I really just need to parent myself as opposed to having that desire to parent another human being. So, for all of those reasons, I knew intrinsically that I needed a life that would allow me to explore freely as much as possible. And I've stayed true to that. That's another reason why I love entrepreneurship and another reason why I bristle whenever I have appointments on my calendar because the way I am and the way my energy flows from minute to minute, I need a lot of white space in my life in order to thrive. So, with that said, I would encourage you to start doing some value assessments. There's tons of them on the internet for free. If you sign up for my email list, I'll send you a values assessment along with a needs assessment and a strengths assessment. But the more you know about yourself, the better informed you are going to be in terms of making this huge life decision. And at the end of the day, whether you decide to have children or not, the meaning that you create in your life is up to you. And I say that because a lot of people say to me,
Oh, you don't want to have kids? Doesn't that make your life a little pointless or purposeless?
and the answer to that is an absolute Hell no. All the people in my life that I've impacted, whether they're in my social circle or my family or out here on YouTube, all of those things give me great significance and personal meaning. So I didn't need children to complete me in any way. I'm also somebody who's very active with dog rescue. So if I had any parental urges, they were completely satisfied with rescue dogs 100%. But that's me. It's such a personal decision. I think everybody's got to make decisions for themselves. And no matter where you end up on that, just make sure you're listening to your own heart and not the influence of the people around you. Now, hey, it's me. I just want to let you know that if you are an ADHD adult, that you are in the right place if you want to create a life and or business that you absolutely love because it aligns to your interests, your energy, and the way you want to show up in the world. So I've designed a number of programs specifically for ADHDers, whether you want to dive into Notion, which is my favorite productivity software to get your schnizzle together, or you want a structured program to help you learn how to get past procrastination and follow through on the things that are important to you. All of those and more you can find on my website, which I will link below. And now let's get back to the video. Now, the one other question that the viewer had that I did not address was whether or not my ADHD diagnosis had an impact on my decision not to have children. And the answer to that is yes and no. So when I was in my 30s and I was making this decision, I didn't have a diagnosis, although I did have the lived experience. And intuitively, I knew that in this lifetime, if I was going to have the best chance at life and if I was going to optimize for well-being and happiness, then I needed to focus on myself as opposed to bringing other children into the world. Obviously, having kids is a huge responsibility. And while I wasn't an irresponsible person, I was somebody who had erratic energy from one day to the next and sometimes had a hard time self-regulating. And I knew that in this lifetime, I needed to take care of those things as opposed to focusing my energy on another human being. So at the end of the day, I think that ADHDers can be great parents, just like neurotypical people. But obviously, again, that comes back to values and what is most important to you. So I hope that sharing my personal story in some way helps somebody out there making the same decision. At the time, it was really hard, but in retrospect, I know that I made the right decision for me. So on that note, guys, thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.